Alright, so this is the coding walkthrough video for prototype 0.2, the second prototype. So what I'm going to do is the same as I did in the first video, which is show you exactly what's changed, and then go through all the code and game objects that have made it happen, essentially. So the main change that we've made for this prototype is a health system for the player, and very, very basic damage by the Hydra game object here, which we added in prototype 0.1. The Hydra can also follow the player around, and upon contacting with them, attacks them essentially and takes away their health. So I'll just demonstrate that quickly here. Yeah, so as you can see in the bottom left, the player now has a health bar. It's a crude health bar, I know, but we haven't got any textures yet. So as you can see, the Hydra is following me. See how it turns? Yeah, so it follows the player around, and upon contacting with them, the screen flashes red and the health bar goes down until it reaches the bottom, and it loads the "you died" scene. So yeah, that's pretty much what's been added this week. So what I'm going to go through now is how that works. So I'll talk about the Hydra first. So the way the Hydra moves is there is a nav mesh over the entire map. Where is it? Yeah. The environment here, there's a nav mesh over the entire map. As you can see here, it's the blue lines, etc., and they go all the way up here as well. So that means essentially, I'll demonstrate that in a minute as well, when the player hides behind one of these, here for example, and the Hydra is here, the Hydra will have to navigate around it rather than just being able to walk straight through. So yeah, this was achieved by adding a nav mesh agent, I should say, to the Hydra itself. And we've adjusted things like the speed and the angular speed, which is the turning distance for the Hydra as well there. And we also added a radius an obstacle avoidance, a radius of 100, so it means that the wings don't clip into the buildings when it's turning because it sees the building further away and turns accordingly to avoid it. So yeah, I'll just go into the code for that now, which is here. So yeah, so what this essentially does is it looks for the player's location here. It calls upon the player's health, which is the health bar that I showed earlier. That's in this script here, which I'll go through in a second. And it also finds the nav mesh agent on the Hydra. So it then tells it gets the script to find the player, and gets the component for the player health, which is in that script there, and looks for the nav mesh agent. And what it basically does here is if the player's health is more than 0, if they're not dead, then set the player as the destination. So it will always follow the player, which is what I showed you a second ago when the Hydra's chasing the player. They'll always follow them around. It's fairly basic AI at this point, but this is the second prototype, so it doesn't need to be too complicated yet. But if the player's health is less than 0, then don't do anything, essentially. So yeah, the nav mesh makes it quite easy to do AI movement, because literally the mesh is the playground for the Hydra, essentially. The Hydra can go anywhere on the mesh, but it can never leave the mesh. So I discovered this while looking through some Unity tutorials this week, and it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, which bodes well, quite frankly, because I've never done 3D coding before. So yeah, I look forward to doing more of that kind of stuff. So yeah, what we'll then look at is the player health script. This one's a bit more. So we've got a basic integer here which starts the player's health at 100. I thought 100 was quite a good number because it's 100%. It's easy to work with. So we've got another integer which is the current health of the player, i.e. if they get damaged, then obviously it's going to be less than 100. So that's the current health. So then we call on a slider, which is, where is it? On the HUD here. Come on, there we go, the slider. So if we go into the actual game, the slider is this thing down here. It literally is just a slider. And then we've got the damage image there, which is the flashing of the red, and the speed of which it flashes, because as you saw when I was demonstrating the gameplay, whenever you're hit by the Hydra, the screen flashes red to kind of show that you're damaged. Yeah. So then this is just a little thing here to say the current health equals the starting health at the beginning of the game. And then if we go into void update here, if the player gets damaged, then flash the screen with the red colour. And then a little line of code here to just say how quickly it'll do it. So flash speed, which is 5f, times time. It flashes it rather quickly, essentially. And then we've got to do the actual taking damage, so detracting from the integer once the Hydra comes into contact with the player. So what it does is it basically takes off from the current health an amount which we have yet to set, essentially, and then detracts from the slider the current health. So basically this enables the slider to go down whenever the player's hit to simulate a health bar. And if the current health is less than 0 and is dead is false, then kill the player, just in case they're not dead already. And then what I've got here is upon death, the scene manager should load scene 1, which, as you saw earlier, is the you died in black letters scene. So yeah, we demonstrated a lot of stuff here and went and set a lot of things, but now what we've got to do is call them, and we call them in the enemy attack script. So this is a little bit simpler. We've got a float here, which is time between attacks, because what we don't want is when the Hydra comes into contact with the player, is the Hydra just go and just kill them immediately. So we've got time between attacks, which is 0.5 seconds, to allow the player to escape. You know, give them a bit of... It can't be too difficult, essentially. So then I've set the attack damage to 10, which is 10% of their health. I thought that was reasonable, you know, for a prototype, just to test things out. And then finds the player game object, takes their health, which is 100, from the player health script here. And we've got a boolean there, player in range. Basically, the Hydra can only attack the player when they're in a certain distance, within a certain distance of them. And we've also got a timer here as well, which I'll go through in a second. So this then finds the player, basically an object tagged player, which is the player, and also gets the component of the player health from the other script. So then we go into colliders. This script will be on the Hydra, by the way. When the Hydra's collider comes into contact with the player's collider, if the game object that it's colliding with is the player, which it will be, then player in range is true. And if the colliders separate, if the player gets away, then player in range is false. And then we've got the timer here. So this timer is the time between attacks. So the 0.5 seconds that we mentioned earlier. So if the timer is less than time between attacks, 0.5 seconds, no, more than, sorry, read that wrong. Yeah, if more than half a second has passed between the last attack and the player is in range, then attack. And what this does then is reset the timer, and then if the player's health is bigger than 0, then take damage. And it calls the take damage function from here, which is somewhere about, yeah, and damage is true and it detracts from the slider. And then it'll then take 10 from the health integer, essentially. So that's how that works. And we'll just demonstrate it again here. So see the slider in the bottom left. Upon contacting the player, it starts to detract, taking away from the 100 integer that we started off with. Now what I will also demonstrate here is the navigation. If you look at this, go through here, see, it navigates around the building. I think that's pretty impressive, to be honest. Oh god, it's going to kill me. Yeah, and then we'll just demonstrate this as well again. Upon death, the player dies. So that's the major change with this update. The other minor one I made was a restart function, which I've just put down here. If you press the R key, then it just reloads the main scene. And that essentially means if you get stuck, or you fall off the edge or something, you just press R and restart the game. Now it does have a bit of a weird bug where it changes the lighting. Don't really know why. That'll be something I'm going to look into for prototype 0.3. But yeah, so that's how all the code and stuff works for this update, and I shall see you in the next video.